Like and subscribe for more inspirational stories.
Tomas lived where the road turned to dust and time seemed to move more slowly. He was a simple man, with skin marked by the sun and hands calloused from working with a hoe. He worked from sunrise to sunset on a farm in the region, always quiet, always correct. But his calm was disturbing. He was seen as strange by many and as a target by some. Sharp tongues accused him of a theft he never committed, and that was enough for the boss, without any proof, to send him away in front of everyone. He returned home with dirty clothes and a frown on his face. Clara, his wife, understood everything without him saying a word. They lived in a small cabin made of wood and old tiles, surrounded by bushes and silence. With his name tarnished, no one wanted to give Tomas any more work. The small and gossipy village turned its back on him. But he didn't complain. He continued praying in silence, planting the little he could in the yard and sharing the little he had with whoever knocked on his door. His way was like this. He took something from the world, but he gave it back with faith. Time passed and food became scarce. The seeds no longer worked as well as before, and Tomas's body no longer responded with the same strength. Clara, who had always been in excellent health, began to get sick. First a mild fever, then body aches, until she stopped getting out of bed. Tomas took care of her with what he had: tea made from wild plants, warm water, prayers and hope. He slept next to the bed on the floor, with his eyes always open, listening to her breathing to know if she was still there. One morning, he knelt down in the dirt yard and wept silently. He didn't ask for wealth. He didn't beg for justice. He just said, "Lord, don't take it from her too." And he stayed there until the sky grew light. That morning, Clara woke up. She was weak, but her eyes were alive again. Tomas felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: relief. He didn't understand how, and he didn't look for an explanation. He just gave thanks. And that same day, he found a bag of beans, flour, and a note at the door. "For those who still believe." He smiled. God had heard. From that day on, little things began to change. A neighbor who had previously turned his face away began to wave from afar. A baker left a loaf of bread at the gate. A child ran up to him just to say, "Thank you," and run away laughing. Tomas didn't understand, but he felt that something bigger was moving. He continued to plant, take care of Clara, and repair the cracks in the house with whatever he could find. His faith was not made of promises, but of constancy. It was like someone who talks to God every day, even without an answer. It was an ordinary morning when the great miracle arrived. A car he had never seen before parked in front of his land. An elegant man got out, with a calm voice and a genuine smile. He said he had come at the behest of a lady from the neighboring town, a woman whom Tomas had helped months before, without knowing who she was, when she lost control of the car, and he welcomed her with water, coffee, and silence. Now she wanted him to take care of a small farm that she had left as an inheritance, a house, land, and a guaranteed salary. Tomas stopped, took a deep breath, looked up at the sky and said, "Thank you, but this is too much." He accepted, not out of ambition but for peace. He and Clara packed up what little they had and went to live in their new house, a simple but solid, a building with a porch and solid ground. The land was fertile, and the first thing Tomas did was plant beans, cabbage, and sunflowers. Clara, little by little, regained the sparkle in her eyes. She made lunch while he plowed the land, and the two of them drank coffee on the porch, looking at the fields as if looking for a new opportunity. They didn't need much. And finally, they had everything. The story began to spread throughout the region. The man who had been unjustly expelled now owned what he planted. Neighbors came to him for advice, for blessings, for seeds. Tomas did not think he was better than anyone else. He remained silent, kind, giving more than he kept. When asked where he got so much strength, he would answer, It comes from what cannot be seen. And he would smile. The same smile of someone who had almost lost himself in the depths of pain, but was pulled back by the invisible hand of faith. Years passed, and Tomas became a point of reference, not of success, but of strength. Until one day, while he was organizing bags of corn on the porch, he heard a car pull up. He recognized the engine before he even saw the bodywork. It was the boss who had humiliated him. He got out with slow steps and his eyes downcast. He told him that the old farm had gone bankrupt, that he had lost everything, and that now he was asking for help. He said he had come to ask for forgiveness. Tomas listened to everything in silence, as always. Then he looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You did what you thought was right, but so did God." There was no anger in his voice, only truth. Tomas invited him for coffee. He served it in the same chipped cup he used every day. The man accepted, not knowing where to put his hands. They talked for a while, but Clara brought cake, and the silence did the rest. When he left, his boss had wet eyes. At the gate, Tomas simply said, "The world turns." He went back to the porch and sat down again. It wasn't about winning. It was about not letting evil take up residence inside him. That, for him, was the true miracle. It was in the midst of that peace that the most unexpected gift came. Clara, already advanced in age, became pregnant. The doctor said it was a miracle, that there was no explanation. But Tomas didn't even want to understand. They named the boy Samuel, a request from God. The boy grew up running among pumpkin plants and free-roaming chickens, listening to stories from his father lying in a hammock. From an early age, he learned to take care of the land, to speak little and to listen a lot. Tomas wrote letters for him to keep when he grew up. He didn't talk about success, he talked about values. "My son, never treat anyone the way they treated you. Be better, even when the world is worse." That was the kind of thing he wrote. Samuel read it in secret, his eyes shining. The farm grew slowly, calmly. It didn't become rich, but it became full. Full of good people, plenty of food, and good shade in the yard. Tomas said he didn't want to be remembered for anything other than that. "I did what I could with what I had, and I left everything better than I found it." And there, on that land, that was more than enough. Time passed, and with it, Tomas' body began to ask for more calm. He no longer got up as early, nor did he pick up the hoe as before, but he still swept the yard with care, watered the plants carefully, and smiled when he saw Samuel running after the chickens. On Sundays, he sat on the porch with Clara, drank strong coffee and listened to the old radio. He said he liked the noise of the world outside, but that true peace was there, in that silence full of meaning. What had previously been absence was now comfort. Over time, Tomas's story reached other cities. Reporters, curious people, and people came to hear it up close. But he never wanted fame. He said that his story was his alone, and that if it inspired someone, that was fine. But it wasn't meant to become a spectacle. When people asked him about miracles, he would answer, "A miracle is waking up in peace." And he would go back to tending to the garden. Clara laughed and called him stubborn. Samuel grew up watching all this, and without realizing it, he was inheriting not only the land, but also the way of looking at the world. One late afternoon, Tomas invited Samuel to sit on the porch. He handed his son a small wooden box that he had kept for years. Inside were the letters he had written. Throughout his life, "You can't read them all at once, read them as you go along." Samuel held them as if he were receiving the world. Tomas smiled, adjusted his hat, and remained silent, looking at the horizon. He didn't mention death or farewell. He only said, "The earth teaches everything, you just have to listen." And that was it, because the man who planted faith didn't need to harvest words. Clara died first. She was peaceful, on a clear morning, lying in a hammock. Tomas felt her absence, like someone missing a branch on a tree. It hurt, but it didn't knock him down. He continued to live at the same pace, taking care of the place they had built together. Sometimes he would speak to her in a low voice. "Clara, Samuel is getting good at this." Or, "The kale was beautiful today." That was how he kept her presence alive, between the coffee and the fields, between longing and the ground. And no matter how much his body begged for rest, his spirit kept moving. One afternoon, Tomas felt that his body weighed differently. He sat on the porch as he always did, but this time he remained there more quietly. He called Samuel and asked him to water the plants, but carefully, as if it were me. Then he asked him to get the old notebook with Clara's bread recipe. He wanted to smell her in the house. Samuel understood without asking anything. He prepared the bread, served the coffee, and sat next to his father. The two of them sat there, unhurriedly, watching the sun go down as if watching a promise being fulfilled. That night, Tomas went to bed early. He put on Clara's favorite shirt, opened the window, and looked up at the sky. "It's beautiful today," he murmured. He picked up the last letter he had written and left it on the table with his son's name on it. He turned off the lamp and closed his eyes. Sleep came calmly, like a breeze. When Samuel entered the room in the morning, he found his father with a serene face, as if he had just changed his dream. There was no sadness there, only silence and gratitude, because those who live truthfully do not need goodbyes, only time to blossom in others. On the day of the wake, the farm was full. Neighbors, people from the city, old acquaintances, and even the old boss came, now bent by time and regret. There were no speeches, no long mass, just simple words, a soft song on the radio, and the smell of Clara's bread that Samuel baked in honor of her. In the coffin, a sunflower branch rested on Tomas's chest. Samuel had placed it. He planted it, saying it was a stubborn thing, that even with little water, it would still turn to the sun. After the burial, Samuel read the last letter. It said, "If I am no longer here, continue, plant, listen to the earth, take care of whoever comes, and never stop forgiving or giving thanks, because miracles come every day, just small ones." He folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. He went back home, watered the plants, fed the animals, and hung his father's hat. On the living room wall, outside, the sunflowers were still facing the same way, and for the first time, Samuel understood what it meant to live with faith. Over the years, Samuel transformed the farm into a living school. He welcomed young people from the region to teach them about the land, the value of hands and silence. He told stories about Tomas without idolizing him, but with respect. He said that his father was not a hero, he was just a man who did not allow himself to be hardened. The visitors listened in silence, and many left with more than just farming lessons. They left with a desire to do things differently, because that is what people like Tomas leave behind. Not a name on a plaque, but an echo that plants others. And one summer afternoon, Samuel walked the same path his father had taken, from the porch to the edge of the field. He stopped, took off his hat, and stood looking at the land. The wind blew lightly, and the sunflowers danced slowly. Behind him, the house was alive, with voices, footsteps, and the smell of food. But there, in that moment, everything fell silent, because a legacy is not what remains when someone leaves. It is what continues, even when no one remembers to tell the story. And in that field, among roots and memories, Tomas continued to exist in the most beautiful way possible, without needing to be seen to be remembered.